The police need to be brought under control and put under civilian management and direction. But no, I'm not for defunding police. The new trend is everybody gets turned out on the street 5 or 6 times with pending charges and no bonds set on them. They're just released and they cycle through. And then there was that clown J. Edgar with the FBI, who turns out to be a black man trying to pass for white. The
Wow.
biggest threat you have right now is a new religion. It's called the rainbow religion. I'm not down in gays, bisexuals, or lesbians because a lot of them look at this thing as a cult and they detest it. Being brave and courageous, men and women of public peace, dignity, order, otherwise, where it's up to us to do this, nobody's going to do it for us.
Yes.
Hi, this is Lee Lewis of the Welshman Studios. This show is going to be linked down below, the full show, but I've cut to the chase. This is guest Judge Joe Brown, which is, he was a judge on American TV. And this is Jesse Lee Peterson, and his show is called The Fallen State. But I'll put the link down below to this episode, so check them out. A man of wealth and knowledge, and he goes into some things that you won't find anywhere else. Stick around because it's going to be interesting.
That you were a Democrat at one time, and then you decided not to, you left the Democratic Party, and did you become a Republican as far as voting
I'm an
or
independent.
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 And why did you why did you become a Democrat and why did you leave?
Black folk were not Democrats. The Democrats were the enemy. That was the Klan. That was the sheriff that pulled you over. That was the highway patrolman that wanted to know what you were doing, but tell Trooper Jackson that you talked to Trooper Johnson and, it'll be all right. It was racist, Strom Thurmond and Eastland and Stennis and Faubus, by the way, all of whom supported Joe Biden, and I heard them introduce him during a particularly unpleasant little episode. I heard him making an early campaign speech, 1972, outside of the state capitol in Dover, Delaware. Those clowns were very unsavory. Now, the Democrats had economic policies that I approved of, and a lot of what was going on in my world was centered around do you or do you not get drafted and sent to Vietnam? Or if you got a ROTC thing, are you going to survive where they send you, or do you get a deferment to pursue a postgraduate degree type thing?
Right.
I didn't like Republicans because they had St. Ron the ray gun, and he ruined public education in California. For example, when I went to UCLA, there was no tuition. There was no tuition for the state college system or the city's colleges. They had an incidental fee, which at UCLA was $56 a quarter, and that got you free medical care, free dental care, free prescriptions, free eyeglasses, concert tickets, all of the entertainments, all of the athletic stuff, and financed a lot of stuff going on around the school, but it was not tuition. So from $56 a quarter, this clown jumped it up to $840 a quarter, which was like, that'd be like 60-some thousand a year now. So it was just absolutely obscene. He was campaigning on the plank that no one needed a higher education. You could do without it. And if you got it, you were likely to be a long-haired hippie who was a comedy-loving sympathizer, etc. and you saw all kinds of far right nasty tricks. And then there was that clown J. Edgar with the FBI, who turns out to be a black man trying to pass for white.
J. Edgar Hoover
History.
was a black man?
Yeah. Oh,
I didn't
well,
know
yeah.
that. What the?
Oh, look. I'll do this. Since we're talking, I'll let you see a picture of him. Now, who is this?
Wow.
That's J. Edgar Hoover
Really?
as a young man.
Well, he definitely looked like a black guy there, but I never knew
Yeah,
that.
and the Smithsonian Channel and the History Channel have done features over the last several years about his hatred for the Klan and what he was, because the Klan ran his family out of Louisiana because they were trying to pass for white. So it's
What the?
interesting what we do to ourselves. So
Was it commonly known that he was black?
some of us knew it, and it's sort of like the worst somebody you can have is somebody who hates his own people because he doesn't want to be reminded that those are his people. He was also gay at a time when that just wasn't happening. His lover, Colson, was the deputy director of the FBI. So they did a lot of nasty stuff. I know when I was undergrad at UCLA, every time we would do something political or anything, which was all the time, you'd be hauled in within 2 or 3 weeks and taken downtown LA by and questioned, interrogated by the FBI. What did you say? I have a First Amendment right to say what I felt like saying. What about it? Did you think I have a First Amendment right? I decline to make any statement. By the way, if you're talking to the FBI or a federal agency, never say, I don't know anything about, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't say that, because they usually tell you what they have you in there for. So they will prosecute you for harassment purposes. And I know later I'd have clients and they'd have 17, 18, 19, 63 counts of an indictment. I'd beat all of them except one, and that was making a knowingly false statement to a federal official or agency. And why was it? Because they record you getting told, we have you in here because you're trying to sit there and deal with violence in the community, or you are pushing this. And if you say, I don't know anything about it, well, it has told you what it was about. So they'd get a conviction on that.
What a
And
mess.
somebody would get a 60-month sentence, and they'd wind up serving 56 to 58 in federal custody on that. And then the rest of it is an acquittal. They did it all the time. You can also thank Joe Biden for that, with him, Eastland, Stennis, and Byrd back in the late 70s and in 1981. So we have a change now where we have things that we blame, and we like to use that as an excuse. But as I'm fond of saying, like right now I'm in a dining area in my house and I'm looking at the kitchen, there's no white supremacist sitting on the other side of the breakfast table or the dinner table or the dining table or the dinner table to interfere with a child doing homework at that table, and a parent trying to teach the child what he needs to be taught and learning in the process. You get kindergarten through 12th grade down, and the rest of your life has open doors. Now, you may have to kick them all the way in, but at least they're unlocked.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we do, we bring on ourselves. And I had great hope for the future back in the late 60s, but it kind of evaporated. And I'm rather disappointed in how badly we are doing harm to ourselves these days. And our main problem is not the kind of killing that used to happen. That was at least related to gang activity or hostilities. Now we see, yo, man, it's all about pimping, man. Now, why you'd want to be a pimp, I don't know.
Right.
And I used to represent a bunch of them 40 some years ago, was their defense counsel, and a lower bunch of scum you cannot find in pimps. And people ideate on the wrong kinds of things, and man's about what your women doing for you, man. Like, I got 4 ladies take good care of me. 2 of them got good jobs. One get a crazy check, the other get AFDC. They takes care of me. Like, what do you do? See,
Yeah.
that whole emasculation thing is something that was not there 55, 60, 50 years ago, 45 years ago. It's new. And Black people and other minorities become the tip of the spear for what I think is this reason. See, if somebody wants to go rainbow, they now have a new ethnic group that's not Black, not Hispanic, not Asian, not Native American. So they can become this rainbow. Now, you are into the religious thing, and I'm going to offer this to you. The biggest threat you have right now is a new religion. It's called the rainbow religion. And if you don't understand why it's a religion, consider that we do have Christianity, Islam, Judaism, we've got Hinduism, we've got Buddhism, etc. But Buddhism does not have a deity. It's a system of philosophy. LGBTQIA plus is a system of philosophy, and there are a number of its followers who have insinuated themselves into government, entertainment, news, and the communications industry, and they are zealots, and they're trying to impose their new religion on the public. You can't have a Christian symbol under an American flag from a government building. You can't have an Islamic crescent. You can't have the multi-pointed Jewish star. You can't have a symbol of Buddha. You can't have a Hindu symbol, but you can have, hanging under a flag in Washington, D.C., on a federal building, on a lot of state capitals. You can have the White House or the Capitol building or on the consulate or an embassy. They have the flag of this new religion, the rainbow religion.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not down in gays, bisexuals, or lesbians because a lot of them look at this thing as a cult and they detest it. As one explained it to me, just because you are a Christian does not mean you supported Reverend Jim Jones and drinking Kool-Aid at large church picnics in Guyana. And if you're a Muslim, that does not mean you support Al-Qaeda or ISIS.
Good point. Yeah. I want to ask, why do you think people like Al Sharpton and others support this new religion? Because you're right about that.
He's a pimp.
I'm sorry?
Sharpton's a pimp. He's a pimp. He used to be James Brown's publicist and some other things too. That's why he always wore his hair gassed, like he was trying to be put in the early modern American history wing at a Smithsonian institution. And have you seen his apparent facelift these days? Apparently he and Joe Biden have the same plastic surgeon crew because they're beginning to look quite similar with the work done on them. It's like, come on now.
Amazing.
But I don't like him because he's always trying to dramatize opportunities for selfish reasons. See, that's one thing that happened 50 some years ago that was a poison that we still have not extirpated from our circumstances. This movement, this unity, allowed certain hustlers, pimps, ne'er-do-wells, snitches, informants, and other stuff to be recruited and get an opportunity to advance at everybody else's expense.
Yeah.
So folks say we need to be unified and we all need to get together. No, sir,
Right.
we don't right now until we weed out the folk that need to be weeded out, because they'll slit your throat when you, or backstab you when you're not looking.
Yeah. That's amazing. I wanted to ask. So you became an independent because of the
I
decision.
just got sick of this thing of attempting to emasculate the country.
Yeah.
That's when it really got bad. And also a thing about gun control. It's been my experience that if somebody's violent, that's a character issue. It has nothing to do with the weapon. And the thing about gun control is that if you expect the crook to follow the law, and he's bent on murdering somebody and getting life or life without parole or the death penalty or risking it, he's not going to refrain from using a weapon because you tack a few more years on it. And the weaponry that I am very familiar with, because here in Shelby County, they had a record that would pile up this high on all of the guns that were confiscated in the county and where they came from when you traced them. The real hardware doesn't get sold at a gun store or gun show. It comes in crates with the kilos of drugs that the war on drugs can't stop. And the U.S. government is complicit in that.
Amazing.
To raise money to fight international terrorism and before that communism, a blind eye was turned on the shipment of American military arms that had been distributed in South America that came in with the cocaine. From Israel, there was a blind eye turned to the Kalashnikov type weapons seized during the Arab-Israeli wars that came in with the opiates that came from Israel to fight terrorists, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and Arabic interest back in the early 70s. It comes in from Afghanistan and Iraq with Kalashnikov stuff and opiates there, and it comes in from South Korea because they now have their own indigenous industry. It's called Daewoo, Daewoo, and they make their own weapons. So they are getting rid of the American weapons that we donated to their cause, along with opiates. And again, this is supposed to be for black ops so they can raise money to fight international terrorism. And we have a steady supply of arms coming into the country along with drugs. You get things like this Chicago situation where a few years ago, these boxcars in the IC Railroad Yard got looted and thousands of military grade weapons were stolen. And they're now in distribution. And Mayor Lightfoot at the time in Chicago, in a very ill-advised fashion, gave a lot of money to street gangs without realizing it, so they were able to finance that operation. So now all over the country, weapons turn up that were taken from those boxcars. You get 18-wheelers hijacked on a regular basis that have shipments of arms to rearm, say, a sheriff's department in Alabama, along with a police department in Alabama, and maybe a new supply for new recruits to the state police. So you get weapons hijacked that way, and you get them in circulation. So you're not going to get the bad guys out of the way with their stuff, because now the new trend is everybody gets turned out on the street 5 or 6 times with pending charges and no bonds set on them. They're just released and they cycle through. And you have this woke thing that is poisonous. Now, last month, well, actually, the beginning of this month, I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're on some business, and myself and business associates, we went over to the cupcake shop where George Floyd met his demise. And we had a 2.5 hour conversation with some of the community locals, and they were telling us how evil the BLM program has turned out for us, how badly this woke thing has turned out for them. We're telling us how evil the BLM program has turned out for us, how badly this woke thing has turned out for them. They said they got police defunding, but it's so bad now that they had 10 or 12 shootings just in the next few weeks after the George Floyd things, because they pulled the police out. They said you could hear women screaming at night as they got raped, and there was no police presence. Somebody gets hurt, has a heart attack, the ambulances won't even come. They've had to form stretcher parties so they can carry the injured people or suffering people to the periphery where the police will come and then bring in an emergency vehicle, 911. Said the people are getting held up and everything, so they had to implement their own community security. And they've spent a lot of time and they wound up getting funded. Guess how they got funded? They had to intervene to keep the BLM types from burning down neighborhoods in Minneapolis, so the police could wind up handling the scene in the more civilized portions of the town. See, that's how crazy some of this stuff gets. It's ineffective and it's about character. These boys are not getting masculine training.
Yes.
And they become violent, out of control when they don't. So you have to put this back in, but the Democratic Party is trying to snatch everything masculine out.
Yeah.
They're saying we need to focus on female employment. Well, in Memphis, 58% of the workforce is female.
Whoa.
That means only 42% of the people working here are male. And when the majority of the males are unemployed, you got a mess. You see, what's going on?
What a
Girls
mess.
aren't doing drive-bys, it's the boys.
Yeah.
Now, nationally, this is the thing that the Democrats have come up with. For the last 20 years, only 28% of each year's high school graduates, on average, are male. Only 32% of the college undergraduates are male. Only 36% of the college grad students are male. And only 44% of the American workforce is male. You've had 50 years of Take Your Daughter to Work week, but not one single day of Take Your Son to Work. You have all of the programs for the girls and not one for the boys. And the boys are still doing the drive-bys, not the girls, though we do have the rise of what I call girl rivers, where somebody has failed to teach these young ladies how to be ladies and to be respectful. And they're brawling, they're fighting, they're doing gang activity worse than I've ever seen. Now, that's what I see as bad, is the girl river phenomenon. I've never seen women fight like this as often and frequently as I have seen them now. Now, we have to do something about putting decency together. And since you have the religious connection, please tell some of these pastors to start preaching sermons about acting like you've got some sense, acting like you have decency. Your objective is not to tell young ladies they have complete license to act in a licentious fashion and go around naked like Lizzo. They need to put some clothes on and act like they're ladies.
That's right.
So they need to be mothers. And it's like when I hear people say what guys can do, I'm not turned on by hearing somebody say, oh, the guys have an opportunity to be interior decorators and fashion designers. What's that do?
Yeah.
So then we turn around and we get this thing where it's taught to the young women that being a mother somehow or another is demeaning. And then we get this trans crowd that seems to have co-opted so much, saying they're just egg producers and, birthers and,
Amazing.
and all of the negation of motherhood. That is not a good thing. That's not healthy for the human race.
You're right. I got to ask, and I need to move a little faster here. I'm getting the signal that time is running out. Were you for? Where did you stand when they were doing this defund the police thing? Where were you on that?
The police need to be brought under control and put under civilian management and direction. But no, I'm not for defunding police, because there is a certain type of systemic danger out there right now that is getting fostered and produces the thing that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
In Minneapolis, in the area where Floyd died, and they took the police out. It just doesn't work. So actually, we probably need more money, but we need civilian control of the police like you have with the military.
Absolutely. What's your opinion on what's happening with the Great White Hope, Donald Trump, right now?
You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used, et cetera, et cetera. We know those as the Miranda rights. Miranda was not a nice person, but when you have law, a lot of times some of the most sacred principles are established through the aegis or the agency of somebody that's not nice. Now, if you're worried about downing Trump, you lose track of the fact that what you see, the indictments in New York, Florida, and Georgia, are completely outside of the law. Take what this clown Bragg did in New York. Whether you like Trump or not, essentially what they did is indicted him for being the victim of a blackmail attempt. They said he attempted to bribe Stormy Daniels to remain silent. This guy didn't go to law school and didn't pay much attention when he was there, because when you flip the script as you were instructed first year, if you had to pay somebody to be quiet, you got blackmailed. So he's the victim of a felony. If you indict a corporation for failure to file an explicit report as to what the payout was, well, there was a court gag order. And if they filed the explicit report, they violated the court gag order. Okay, get to Georgia. I won't belabor all of the accounts, but I downloaded the 92-page indictment, and I was shocked to find that some of the crimes were that Trump is supposed to have advocated checking out Newsmax, Fox News, and some other conservative, religious-based news institutions. They're legal. Hell, I read them. So that's supposed to be somehow or another criminal now. All right, you get down to this thing in Florida, and they're talking about the documents. Well, let's forget what Trump did. Let's go back when he was not president of the United States and George Herbert Walker Bush was. There's a case from 1988, U.S. Supreme Court. It's called United States Department of Navy versus Egan, E-G-A-N. And if you read the concurring opinions, they say, since constitutionally the president is the commander-in-chief of the military and chief diplomat of the country, he has an inherent power to declassify or classify anything, any document, in any form, shape, or fashion he chooses. He can do what he wants with it, because guess what? The mandate that causes it to be prepared says it is for the exclusive purpose of advising the president on the state of our intelligence versus what's going on in the world. So he also has a fiduciary responsibility, it's been held, that you do. Once you take that oath, whether you are in office or not, it still binds you, and you have to make an assessment on whether archivists have appropriate security clearances. And also the other thing goes to this. Even if Congress comes up with a law that says he can't, well, that's unconstitutional. And Marbury versus Madison, 1803, 220 years ago, says if Congress passes an unconstitutional act, it is null and void. And that's what seems to be the case here. So you keep going into it and you find something that is very disturbing. Individuals belonging to a party are going to do the equivalent of a child in elementary school throwing something at another child and then running to the teacher and saying, teacher, he's going to hit me. You just wait until you go, my mommy picks me up. You won't be able to catch me. Nah, nah, nah. See, that's what it looks like. And the idea that three individuals are going to, or three little entities are going to deprive the American public of who they want to vote for is absolutely disturbing. Let's say it looks like the National Socialist Workers Party.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not familiar with that, the acronym for National Socialist Workers Party is Nazi, N-A-Z-I. And we remember Adolf and Heinrich and all those guys.
Amazing.
And
Let me
what
ask,
happened?
let me ask this. Do you think they're going to put him in prison?
There's no way this should stand on appeal. What they want to do is take allowance of what Biden and Stennis and Byrd introduced 40 years ago, is legislation that allows a U.S. attorney for the specific purpose of crippling someone, bringing criminal charges, even if there's no chance of making them stick. This is what I said was happening when they started the prosecution of Dr. Bill Cosby. I said, this is so far on the wrong side of the Fifth Amendment, there's no way it would stand. Now, I've talked to Dr. Cosby personally several times since he got out, and they offered him immediately, we'll let you out 2 or 3 days if you'll just go along and concede. No way. He wouldn't. And the bottom line is you can't violate the Fifth Amendment by saying one DA says we're not going to prosecute. Okay, so now he doesn't have any protection against being required in a civil matter to answer interrogatories. And then another DA coming in and saying we're not bound by that. We're going to take his interrogatories and use them as basis for our prosecution. He never admitted wrong. All he was doing was saying, hey, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, sex revolution when all this was going on. They got what they wanted. I didn't take advantage of them. But you see, those were constitutional principles that are more important than anyone's grievance because they impact all of us. That's what's scary about this whole thing.
Amazing. Short answer. What is the solution to all this mess?
Home training, but since we don't have home training, we have to get back to where we were 40 years ago, 45, 50, 60 years ago, which is churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, the public, the movies, the entertainment industry. The people start talking about character, making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, etc. Being brave and courageous, men and women of public peace, dignity, order, otherwise, where it's up to us to do this. Nobody's going to do it for us.
Yes.